Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse, and thank you so much for joining me here live tonight. I think before the countdown, you got a little snippet of me doing a little work. We have some new tech set up tonight, so you got a little preview of that. Anyway, we've got a lot to talk about tonight. Tonight's show may not go the full hour. My two daughters have both been sick the past couple of days. Maybe come down with something, who knows what. So I didn't have the time I would have liked to prepare a full, robust show, but we still have a lot to be digging into. So getting into today's show, there's two main topics that we're going to be covering today. One is the arrest of Sean, Diddy Combs, Puff Daddy, Love, well, all the nicknames he has. And not just, the arrest of him and what's happening, but the bigger picture of what this represents. We're also going to be talking about the exploding pagers linked with Israel and Hezbollah. I'm not sure if you've seen that yet, but this is a wild story. But before we dig into those couple of things, I've got a few quick messages for you. First off, if you're watching on Rumble, thank you very much for supporting free speech. Make sure you hit that green follow button below. And also, I encourage you to join my locals community. It's going to be a place where I'm just getting, ramping up the content there. It will be a place where you get to see a window into, my own life and who I am and my family and just some more personal things, our own prepping journey and all that kind of stuff. So if you're on Rumble already, great. Go to that this is the red button for joining locals. Also, just a question for you. Are your savings safe? So with every passing day, the value of the dollar erodes. It's being weakened by overprinting and rampant inflation. And now, as the BRICS nations accelerate their de-dollarization plan to collapse the dollar, the risk only grows. So imagine waking up one morning and finding your hard-earned savings worth only a fraction of what they were before. And honestly, folks, it's happening faster than you think. But you have a choice. A simple shift, one decision can protect your wealth from the collapse. Moving even a small portion of your savings into gold and silver could be the key to securing your future. Gold and silver have stood the test of time. They're not just metals, they're safe havens, impervious to the whims of inflation and economic turmoil. So while the dollar loses value, gold and silver are standing strong. The time to act is now, folks, before the dollar weakens even further. Safeguard your savings with noble gold. Folks, imagine the peace of mind knowing that your wealth is protected, that you're going to have assets you can pass on to your children. It's simple, it's safe, and it's something you can do today. So move some of your savings from the vulnerable IRAs and 401ks into the enduring strength of gold and silver. Because when the dollar fails, when the economy crashes, you'll be so glad that you did. And there's no better company to work with than Noble Gold. Folks, protect your future. Act now. Call 626-654-1906 or visit goldwithseth.com to get your free gold and silver investment guide. And again, those links are in the description below. That's goldwithseth.com or 626-654-1906. All right, folks, so diving into today's stories. First, are we looking at this pager story? So this is just wild. I've never seen something like this before, but I guess we're living in the era of seeing a lot of things that we haven't seen before. I'll pull up this tweet here. This is from Colin Rugg over on Twitter. So here's what he's saying. He says, okay, so Israel apparently intercepted these pagers from Taiwan that then detonated in the pockets of thousands of Hezbollah fighters before they reached Lebanon. So basically, the story is that there were all of these Hezbollah fighters. And at one time, I think it was 3:30, if I remember correctly, basically all these pagers blew up. And so there were, I think there's close to 3,000 injuries so far. I think there's been 9 dead. 1 child was dead. And there's all these videos of this happening, which we'll look at a few of them. I've made sure I didn't choose the videos that were really gory because there's some pretty kind of gnarly injuries from this. But so I'll continue his post. It says, according to the New York Times, Israel tampered with the devices that Hezbollah ordered. They reportedly placed 2 ounces of explosive material next to the battery in each pager. It says a switch was also embedded that could be triggered remotely to detonate the explosives, the Times reported. So Hezbollah fighters received a message at 3:30 p.m. Lebanon time that looked like it was coming from their leadership. When the message came through, there was a brief pause, presumably so the figures would raise the pagers towards their face before they detonated. Over 2,800 people were injured and 9 people were killed. That's just thus far. So here's a video of the mayhem. As I told you, it's nothing too overly gory, but man, this is pretty crazy. Just check this out. So here, watch. I'll zoom in a little bit on this one. Again, nothing gory. So what you see in this video, there's a guy on the left right there, and he's sitting at looks like maybe like a little cafe or something, street vendor. You hear the beep, and he looks down, and then it just explodes. You can see this is outside of a hospital, just the amount of chaos. And here you go inside of a hospital, just absolute chaos. I mean, this is I won't continue playing it because there's some gory stuff. I mean, this is a new kind of warfare that there's literally exploding that somehow this is probably Mossad, right? That they intercepted these pagers that were going to these Hezbollah fighters. They then inserted a compound. So here, let's take a look at what this is. So according to Sky News Arabia, Mossad was able to inject a compound of, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, PETN, into the batteries of the new encrypted pagers that Hezbollah began using around February before they even arrived in the hands of the Hezbollah members, allowing them to remotely overheat and detonate the lithium battery within the device. Now, it also seems like what New York Times is reporting is that they had some sort of remote function where they could actually, there's a little remote that they could remotely trigger. So instead of heating the batteries up, because it seems like they all happened right at the same time. So if they're relying on heating the batteries up to then cause this stuff to explode, my guess is that there would be some batteries that heat up quicker than others, but it seems like there's some sort of remote access to this. Here's the compound. But this is just, I mean, this is crazy because, I mean, I carry a cell phone with me, most places. The cell phone's got a battery in it. These cell phones are made in China. I mean, what if, now call me crazy here, but what if the CCP had some plan that, all these different phones coming out of a factory in China were going to have these little, explosives put into them and sent over to America or sent into whatever enemy territory they're looking to capture? I mean, this is frightening. I mean, it's crazy. But what's also crazy about this is that there's two sides to this. Okay, you might look at this and you might say, okay, well, Israel was good for doing this, right? Because they were able to take out all these bad guys without carpet bombing a city, right? Look at what's happening in Gaza, etc. Now, that is true. I mean, it is a pretty targeted way, but by that same approach, if there's over close to 3,000 that were injured and there's only 9 dead, it's not that effective as a kill, right? I mean, you'd probably want to have a couple thousand dead, right? If you're Israel, like if some guy gets 3 fingers blown off and another guy's blind in one eye, I mean, obviously you're hurting and you're maiming the enemy, but it seems like a pretty complex operation to have 9 die, and I believe that one of those 9 was even a child, and maybe some of them were even civilians. So there's the angle that maybe this was a as an act of war, it was better than blowing something up. But there's also the other perspective, which is that all of these people, or at least the vast majority of them, they weren't just sitting on some military compound, right, where they blow up and they're taking out the other bad guys. I mean, the one video I showed you, the guy was sitting at some sort of street vendor. So what happens if there's around 3,000 of these people that had these detonate? How many of them were on a bus? How many of them were standing in line at a grocery store next to a mom carrying a baby? I mean, it's just insane. It's evil. I mean, either way, I guess war itself is evil, right? And I'm not kind of be diving into the good and the bad, but it's just a state of war and it's a state of modern mankind. But I don't know, I just thought that was absolutely insane. Actually, Mike Adams, he sums it up. He's got a tweet here who says, actually, here's a video. I'm not going to play the sound on this video because the sound is kind of disturbing because the guy's screaming. But here, this video right here, another example. Look at this guy right here in the baseball cap, right? He's just in a market shopping. Now, there could have been a kid sitting next to him. So watch what happens here. Now, he didn't kill him. And if I had the audio up, you'd be able to see that the guy is like screaming in agony, like absolutely screaming in agony. But I mean, it's just crazy. Here it is again, right? Watch this. Boom. And there you go. I mean, it's absolutely crazy that this stuff is going on. But I guess this is war, right? This is war. So, but Mike Adams, I'm going to read through his tweet here. He says, "This is a huge deal, folks. Israel's intelligence services remotely detonated 1,000 plus comms devices in the hands of Hezbollah members in Lebanon. Reportedly pagers, but also some reports say cell phones. They were remotely triggered to overheat and detonate their batteries." Now, it seems like there's also some sort of switch. Not sure. Many have been killed, including some children. Many fingers and hands blown off. If the tech exists to do this in Lebanon, the same tech exists to do this in the USA. Your mobile phone is a remote controlled bomb, and intelligence services can detonate it at will. Let that sink in. Not to mention, he should have put there that most of our remote controlled bombs, these cell phones, are made over in China, right? Which is a hostile nation towards America. I mean, when you realize how much this stuff is out there, I mean, for me at least, it makes me think about look at this situation, and especially the amount of peace I have in my life, and thinking that, gosh, God must be in control, right? Because you look at how much stuff could be going wrong for us. Like, yes, okay, like America's in a rough spot, but there's so much worse stuff that could be happening, and this is a highlight of that. It's just crazy though, like what technology has been doing. It's just absolutely crazy what they're doing with it. So now getting into, we're gonna jump into the P Diddy, Puff Puff Daddy, P Diddy, Sean Combs. I don't keep up with all these rappers' names, right? It's like, okay, what's your name? Okay. But before we jump into that, one more quick message for you. So technology is a big thing, right? As we're talking about. So let me ask you one question though. How many of you are concerned that your privacy is being attacked? I know I am, right? So the deep state, including the DOJ, is invading individual private messages and targeting them based on their political affiliation. Look what has happened to the CEO of Telegram. So this is why I partnered with Freedom Chat. So Freedom Chat is a private social messaging app that, like me, believes that privacy is a fundamental right. Okay. It's kind of a crazy extreme thing, right? So yeah, they believe, so Freedom Chat is a private social messaging app that believes that privacy is a fundamental human right. So Freedom Chat offers true end-to-end encryption, built-in screenshot protection to ensure that no one can screenshot your conversation. So what that means is that if you're chatting with somebody, they can't even screenshot your conversation. I like that. Okay. There's no storage of your messages on their servers. There's no commercial use of your data. So this is an app, honestly, that I trust. It's that my family and I rely on, especially as we approach the election. So some people will stop at nothing to maintain power, making privacy protection more important than ever. So folks, download the app right now by going to freedomchat.com/man-in-America. So I'm such a huge fan of Freedom Chat that I even made my own channel on there, right? It's a private channel. You can subscribe. I got some cool content on there. So simply download the app, search for my channel, and subscribe. So Man in America. So no one can even see the channels you're subscribed to or the posts that you react to. So it's truly like your own private news feed. You can speak freely and message privately with Freedom Chat. Again, download the app today and subscribe to my channel at Man in America for exclusive posts and content. So again, the URL is freedomchat.com/man-in-America. All right, so jumping into what's going on with P Diddy, this stuff gets crazy. Okay, absolutely crazy. So I'll pull up a tweet here that just kind of helps set the stage for us. It's from Liz Crokin, who's been at the center of exposing these kinds of blackmail operations for quite some time. Now, she says that Diddy indictment unsealed, more arrests likely. So Sean Diddy Combs has been charged with racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion and transportation to engage in prostitution. The indictment states from 2008 to the present, members and associates of Combs Enterprise allegedly engage in sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion, and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Liz says that I know a lot of people are concerned only Diddy will take the fall and other accomplices in his ring guilty of sex trafficking and more will evade justice. This indictment makes it clear that there are many in his network implicated in some of the same horrendous crimes who are staff and or associates. So I'm confident there will be more arrests to come. So I have a short clip for you here. This is I'll play the first minute or two of this. This is kind of announcing, what's going on here. So check this out.
Charging Sean Combs with Today I'm announcing the unsealing of a 3-count indictment, charging Sean Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, interstate transportation for prostitution. The indictment alleges that between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. As alleged in the indictment, to carry out this conduct, Sean Combs led and participated in a racketeering conspiracy that used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity, including sex trafficking, forced labor.
All right, so I'm going to take a look now at the actual indictment. So let's pull this up. So here you go. United States of America versus Sean Combs, a.k.a. Puff Daddy, a.k.a. P. Diddy, a.k.a. Diddy, a.k.a. PD, a.k.a. Love. Okay, that's interesting there. What's the funny thing is that in every instance when they say Sean Combs, they put all those AKAs in there. It's kind of comical. So the overview we've already read through. It's just detailing some of those things we talked about. But where it gets kind of crazy, okay, looking in here. So if you keep going down, talk about, Combs and just the different illegal things that they're doing. Okay. Now, what's interesting is if you get here to the Combs Enterprise, right? So it says that from at least in or about 2008 through on or about the date of the filing of this indictment, that Sean, Combs and others known and unknown were members and associates of a criminal organization. They called the Combs Enterprise or the Enterprise. It says members and associates of the Combs Enterprise engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other activities, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion, and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. I mean, this is crazy because this wasn't just an individual. It wasn't some kind of corrupt guy. This guy had built a criminal empire. And this is what we're kind of realizing. This is the stage of history that we're in, where you see these people that are the famous, the mega rich, the super successful, the Hollywood actors, the music stars. And the more we dig into this and the more that it's brought out through indictments like this, the more you realize that our world is truly inverted, right? I don't think it's going to be this way forever. I think that we're approaching some massive changes with this. But what I mean by that is that we live in a world where, unfortunately, it's the evil that rises to the top. It's very difficult for the good to rise up to the top in this world because it's, the world's in a lot of ways controlled by Satan and controlled by these families and this wealth that's been passed down for generations and generations. And how the system works, though, is that you get to the top through corruption. There's maybe some special cases, of course. I'm not saying everybody, but it's sickening actually to think about it. It's upsetting because it's just how the world is built. That, like, look at this guy who's one of the most famous rappers. Right? He has a massive business empire worth untold amounts of money, and he was running like a massive criminal enterprise. I mean, we live in a world today, especially we live in a country today in America, where the criminals are put on TV and celebrated, and they're given freedom to do whatever they want. And the good people are attacked and censored, and they try to assassinate them. Like, look at what's happened with Trump. It makes me wonder also, is the timing of this thing just to shift the news narrative off a second assassination attempt? And these are only the assassination attempts that we're aware of. Like, I've heard from private conversations with folks that are, kind of closer to the inner circle, that there's been tons of assassination attempts, right? The fact that we know just of these two, but it's just crazy that we live in this kind of a world where the good people are demonized and the evil people are turned into, they become the gods, the idols of our societies. It makes you, even looking back in history too, it makes you wonder, the people that were so heavily demonized over the course of history, were they really bad people? Or were they just people that were stepping up and fighting against the system? I mean, it's just wild. But then as you get further into what's happening with P. Diddy, though, it gets more and more crazy. So, one of the reports they talked about coming out that was in the indictment was that he would have these, I think they called them freakouts, or what was it? I forget the exact name. These, basically, he would have these massive parties where what they would do is they would bring in all these male prostitutes. And I didn't want to pull this stuff up to read for you because it's kind of gross. I'm going to be a little more careful with my speech here. But that they would, for days on end, force these people, the guests of the party, with these prostitutes, they would be forced to perform like nonstop sex acts for like days on end. They would be drugged up. So they'd be given things like ketamine, ecstasy. There's a handful of other drugs that they were using. So they were on all kinds of drugs while they were forced to perform these sex acts. And then I guess supposedly that, Diddy would be watching, he would be pleasuring himself while watching, he would partake in them, he would be angry and violent. I mean, it's like this, it's eyes wide shut level stuff, right? But then you think about this, okay, so you think it's like, he's this really famous guy. We found out that, his house has like hundreds of cameras all over the place recording what's going on. It's obvious that he's some sort of blackmail operation. Now, we know that Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell, et cetera, they've got, massive ties to Mossad. I couldn't find any ties. There's some subtle things of, his ties to, potentially, but nothing really worth reporting on. But it also makes you wonder, is maybe was he a CIA asset? Was he someone working for the feds? Because again, what you find if you look at these criminal enterprises, blackmail, bribery and blackmail, like this is how the criminal world works, right? You do it through bribing and blackmail. Like, this is the tool of business if you are a criminal, right? Like, for me, like, I'm an honest businessman. Okay. I've run businesses. I'm an entrepreneur. I've had different businesses before, and it's difficult. It's not easy. I've had businesses that failed, because you do things the honest way. You try to get a competitor, you try to beat them out and gain the business. But if you're operating in the criminal underworld, you don't think like that. You think, okay, how can I, say you have a competitor, or say you're in construction and you want to get some things passed. Well, how can you compromise the person in power, right? Whether it's a mayor or so you have all kinds of blackmail operations, you have bribery operations, and so that's just how it works. And so if you look at P. Diddy and this empire, this criminal empire that he had, it makes you wonder, like, what kinds of people did he have dirt on? Because there's a video of LeBron James, bragging about how great P. Diddy's parties were. But what we're seeing through this indictment is that a lot of his parties ended up being sex and drug filled extravaganzas that it seemed to be with a primary aim of capturing blackmail evidence. So, look, P. Diddy was very close to Oprah, to Obama. If you look at his white parties, he had these very famous white parties with Mariah Carey and Hollywood stars. I mean, he had these parties with all of the celebrities, major politicians, even former presidents attending. So it makes you wonder what role he had. It makes you wonder what kind of people he had blackmail on, because this is some crazy stuff. Now, I'm going to pull up another article here. This is a New York Post article. This is back in March this year when his home was raided. So this article here says, Sean Diddy Combs has been untouchable for decades, but now people are out to take him down. So this is interesting. So this is an interview with a cop. So they're saying, okay, quote, okay, it could be over for Sean Diddy Combs as his seemingly bulletproof billionaire and his seemingly bulletproof $1 billion empire. So, quote, he has a very questionable past that he's been able to control because of his power for a very long time. So this is guy's Derek Parker, who was a detective in the NYPD's Rap Intelligence Unit, aka Hip Hop Cops. But he says, it looks to me like someone is behind this, someone who really wants to destroy his brand and take him down. Well, for one, I had no idea that there was a specific NYPD intelligence unit that was focused on rap and that was literally called the Hip Hop Cops, right? So the Hip Hop Cops were the NYPD focused on rap crime. Interesting. So the fact that this guy, this is back in March, coming out and saying this, that like something's happened. This is what you realize too, is that why is it this guy who's been doing this for probably decades went untouched, and now all of a sudden there's all this dirt coming out on him. The same thing with Epstein, right? Why is it that the Epstein all of a sudden, because some sort of shift happens. Now, here's another thing I was going to pull up for you. So I'm not going to play the video because this guy's just swearing like you wouldn't believe. So there's a comedian named Eddie Griffin who claims that Diddy is being sacrificed by powerful forces. So he's suggesting that the raids on Diddy were orchestrated by industry giants like Universal Music Group, Clive Davis, the Lucian Grange, who allegedly conspired to seize the blackmail tapes Diddy had on them. So according to Griffin, these figures leveraged their connections within the FBI and the DHS to confiscate the incriminating evidence. And this is a whole thing too. It's like, there's a lot of people that when they see these events happen, we've been waiting for justice for so long. And you see this happen, and you say, oh, great, finally, one of these criminals that's involved in blackmail and sex trafficking and pedophilia and any number of things, you think, oh, finally they're getting brought down. But what you realize, and this could have been Epstein as well, because I remember Epstein when the whole situation was going on and he was on trial, they put him in prison and he died. Everyone was celebrating, right? All the people that understood his role in society were celebrating, but it makes this guy puts it in a different light by saying, look, all it means is that the powerful individuals that are far more powerful than the person that's conducting the blackmail operations, they say, they leverage their influence over the feds, over the DHS, because they're all controlled with blackmail and who knows what kind of pedophilia and stuff is going on there, right? So basically that they put their call in, they say, okay, you know what? We want those tapes because this guy's getting a little bit out of control. They've got blackmail on us. And so they take out someone like an Epstein, or they take out someone like a Combs. That way, all the blackmail never reaches the day of light, right? And to me, that makes a lot more sense. Now, you could arguably say that, that there, I would agree in certain scenarios that there are certain reasons or certain individuals that are trying to come clean now before Trump comes into office. Is that a possibility? Potentially. But this has been ongoing, and it makes me think more so that the people that he has blackmail on that are probably very, very powerful, maybe they're done with him. I mean, it's kind of crazy. But then let me get into MK Ultra. This is where it gets kind of wild. Okay, so we've established that there were these drug parties. So there's an article here. This was a big deal actually when this lawsuit happened. So this was back in, let's see, what year was this? 2023 is when this was published. Okay. So it says Sean Combs is accused by Cassie of rape and years of abuse in lawsuit. So in the suit, the singer says that Mr. Combs, known as Puff Daddy or Diddy, subjected her to a pattern of control and abuse over a decade. Mr. Combs vehemently denied the allegations. Well, we've now discovered that the allegations seem to be true. Okay. So I'm going to read a little bit from here. So it says that, I'm not going to get into that, but basically, you can see here that, let me kind of scroll down a little bit to find the exact part that I was talking about. That there's obviously some blackmail going on. And this woman, she even talks about, basically some of these sex parties that they were having. I'd like to find that little part to read to you. Let's see. She's going in saying, but the suit says that he began to exert extraordinary level of command over her life. In addition to controlling her career, he paid for her car, apartments, and clothing, even had access to her personal medical records. So it says, according to the suit, the results from an MRI scan she had for memory loss, possibly caused by drug use or by beating, she said she suffered from Mr. Combs. She also goes into these parties, right, talking about the specific parties that they were having. What's also crazy is that they seized, like, I think over 1,000 bottles of baby oil, right? In the most recent raids, it just happened that they literally seized over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricants for these parties. So here it says that, here we go. It says, a few years into Miss Ventura's relationship with Mr. Combs, the suit says he began coercing her to engage in a fantasy of his called voyeurism, in which she was directed to have sex with a succession of male prostitutes, while Mr. Combs watched, pleasured himself, took pictures, and shot video. Now, it continues, according to the suit, Mr. Combs called these encounters freak-offs, which involved costumes like masquerade masks and lingerie. They continued for years, taking place at high-end hotels across the United States and in Mr. Combs' homes. The suit said that he instructed Miss Ventura to search for the websites of escort services to procure male sex workers. Now, so this is the key right here. Okay. It says that drugs were supplied at these events, which Miss Ventura's suit says that she took because they, quote, allowed her to disassociate during these horrific encounters. Okay. So this is the key, folks, that this woman, this is in a lawsuit, that she took these drugs because they allowed her to disassociate during these horrific encounters. Okay, so if you look at this, now it's so easy to look at a situation like this and think, oh, it's a blackmail operation. He's arranging these high profile people to come in and do these really terrible, gratuitous acts with male prostitutes and, who knows what. And they're wearing masks and everything, and it's some sort of freaky, weird stuff, and it goes on for days. You could say, okay, it's a blackmail operation, and most people might end it at that thought. But when I'm reading this, what I'm looking at here is this has all the hallmarks of some sort of MK Ultra operation. So if you look into MK Ultra, which is a CIA mind control program, which it ties very closely into SRA, satanic ritual abuse, that a big part of how MK Ultra works, or how SRA works, is it's torture. And often it starts when kids are very young, like, children are born into these SRA, ritual families. They're multi-generational satanic families. And what happens is they start, all kinds of terrible things. Like, they love them, they torture them. And then it breaks their minds. What they're looking for is the ability for the person to do what they call disassociation, right? What it means, and if you've studied MK Ultra, you know that disassociation is at the center of what makes an MK Ultra victim like the perfect candidate. Because when a person is able to disassociate, and what it means, like, they retract into their being and deep in their subconscious, right? So let's just say that someone is brutally raped for like days on end, right? Hypothetically, like, at a certain point, what happens is that person just, they almost say they leave their body because it's so intense for them. It's so painful. And this is horrible stuff. I don't like talking about it, but this is, if you want to understand how our world is being run, and you want to understand why it's this inverted, evil power structure I was talking about earlier, you kind of have to understand these things. And so what they do, though, is that they then fracture the mind. So what they do is they take this person's mind. Once that person has the ability to disassociate strongly, they can then break that mind into multiple personalities. And so they can have one personality that is there's different names for them, right? There's maybe is like an escort. They have one personality that is trained as an assassin. They have one personality that's trained as a very proficient politician, right? And this is real stuff. I'm not making this up. And you can go, there's all kinds of documents that have been released through FOIA requests and declassified CIA documents. So if you've ever seen the Manchurian Candidate, where they have this guy who is the Manchurian Candidate, right? So he's the guy that is part of an MK Ultra program, and they have these cues these combination of words or sounds or whatever it is, that these cues will unlock different parts of that personality. And so for the guy in the Manchurian Candidate, and it's been a while since I watched it, but if I recall correctly, there was a certain cue that he was given that would activate the assassin character within him. And he would go then, he attempted to assassinate, I think, the president at that time, if I remember correctly, for the movie. So this is how it works, though. But drugs were always a major part of it. Like if you look into the psychological studies, they bring in top psychiatrists and people. It wasn't just it was medical. So they would oftentimes use LSD. So LSD was one of the major drugs that they used. Ketamine. There's a handful of other drugs that they would use because what it would further do is it would further remove that person from their body, right? And it would also induce like mass amounts of fear, panic, all kinds of very negative emotions, which are heightened by the drug experience. So imagine, just put yourself into this, okay? This is, and it's kind of a dark place to go, but I mean, this is what's in these indictments, these lawsuits. So imagine this woman, right, the one I'm talking about here, and Miss Ventura. And imagine that you go to a party with P Diddy, right? I mean, hey, wow, cool, great. You're going to a celebrity party. That's amazing, right? Everyone's like, oh wow. So imagine though you get into it and it starts happening and the party's going and some people leave, but some people stay and you start seeing some sexual stuff happening and you're taking some party drugs. But then imagine what that turns into is a situation where you're basically being repeatedly raped by male prostitutes. You're hopped up on all kinds of drugs, ketamine, like who knows what else, ecstasy, probably LSD. So you're already in a place where you feel this sense of evil that's so strong, but then everyone's wearing masks, right? So imagine that you're not even in a place where you can see faces, that people are wearing these masquerade, it's like Eyes Wide Shut, right? So even what she says that the drugs were supplied at the events, but she says that she took them because they allowed her to disassociate during these horrific encounters. Folks, that is MK Ultra, right? So this makes me think it's like, was what he was doing, was what, PD was involved with, was it more than blackmail operation? Was it also about programming? And maybe here's the key question is, so this woman had a very popular music career. She was very successful. It makes me wonder if she's someone that even from a very young age was subjected to this kind of abuse and turned into a basically an MK Ultra mind slave. And this is a whole other topic that I'd love to do a much longer show on, which I probably will. But so if you look at the people that are popular in society, so again, we've talked about this inversion of good and evil. So where it is that the evil, the power that resides at the top rewards evil and punishes good, which makes sense, right? If our world is controlled by evil people, they will build a system that trickles down into the whole world, a system that's built on evil. So it's a system that rewards being evil, and if you're evil, you advance to the next step, and it punishes being good. So if you're good, you get punished. Now, see, I believe that this is just their system; it's not God's system. And it's like, okay, even if I get punished, in this lifetime for my good deeds, and I don't become some super successful billionaire or millionaire or whatever it is, like I'm rewarded after this life, and that's how I look at things. Like I'm rewarded in the afterlife. Whereas for them, it's like they're rewarded in this life, and who knows what happens in the afterlife for them. It's not going to be pretty. But this system, though, of control, if the more you dig into the MK Ultra and the mind control programs, the more you understand that they don't casually let someone gain a large level of influence. So if you look at a lot of the famous people, the people that are, say, A-list actors or Grammy, award-winning musicians or, CEOs of massive Fortune 500 companies or whatever it is, the people that are controlling this world, and I believe that their grip is they're losing their grip on the world, okay, which is a good thing, but the people that are controlling the world, they will have to have safeguards in place, because what if someone gets really famous and rich and has a lot of money and power like a Donald Trump, and decides to go against that agenda and decides they want to actually turn good. So, the more power and the more money and the more influence someone has in this world, the more risky it is for this cabal. And so that's why a lot of the people, this is my own personal belief through my own research, I believe that a lot of the people that are in major positions of power, whether they're politicians, maybe presidents, actors, musicians, big time CEOs. I think a lot of these people are actually MK Ultra. I think that they're bred for that role. And if you trace a lot of people, but you trace like famous people back, whether it was like Britney Spears or some people that got really famous, you can trace their history back. And a lot of them came from like Mickey Mouse Club on Disney. Disney is absolutely highly involved in this MK Ultra programming. They're basically taking kids from a very young age and building them up to be controlled. So a lot of these people that you see that rise to power, I suspect that a lot of them are actually MK Ultra mind slaves, and that they went through intense torture and satanic ritual abuse, and who knows what kinds of stuff they went through as children into young adulthood. And now they're people that are just puppets. Like they're literally just puppets. Like even presidents are people that we, really despise because they're pushing this evil agenda. It's like, are they even in control of their own body? Because if you understand the depth of MK Ultra and how it works, you understand that they can literally like say a few words, it might be like blue vanilla chicken couch, right? Those might be the words that then snap someone out of place, and something else takes control of their body. So, it's crazy, but if you look at this, makes me think that looking at what this woman said here, that a lot of what I believe that was happening with Sean Combs, I think is highly likely that it was some sort of MK Ultra mind control process. And the thing is that maybe what it was is that if there's certain people in the entertainment industry where, in the music industry where he was specifically assigned, say they got a little bit outside of control, that maybe it was his job to bring them back in and say, look, you need to come to this party. You're coming to the party. You have to. And they bring them back in for these sessions where they then reprogram them, right? They reprogram them through this really, really intense abuse and evil. And yeah, it's kind of crazy. So this is what, there's a lot of topics I wanted to focus on tonight. I wanted to talk about the assassination attempt, all that. But when I saw this story and I was researching as I was pulling things together, and specifically when I came across that woman talking about the drugs that she was given before entering into these multi-day, I'm sure they were probably aggressive orgies where she was all drugged up, and how she used the drugs to disassociate, just a light bulb went off. It's like, oh gosh, it makes so much sense. This is how they're maintaining their control. But I really do believe that these evil systems are losing their control, and I've talked a lot about that. And you'll see it in the shows. So, anyway, folks, this is kind of we're coming to the conclusion of the show. One thing I will tell you is that I'm working on building out a series on prepping. Right, this is kind of changing the topic a little bit, but I asked folks on Telegram and Twitter, say, hey, do you have any questions about prepping? And it's funny because the response I got was overwhelming. And so I've done a lot of shows on prepping, but I feel like that the overall sentiment right now heading into this election is people have this sense that something might be coming, that we need to prepare. And so I am someone that, look, I'm not like a super expert on prepping, but I've spent a lot of my life really, really studying these things. And actually, I don't just study them, I do them, right? Like I'm really serious about preparedness. And so I'll be putting together a multi-part series, which I'll probably do like, one part per week. My first kickoff that I hope to be this week, maybe Thursday or Friday, I'll do like my first show. There'll be live shows where I'm gonna be going over like the core, basically it'll be like a prepping 101. So maybe I'll do say 3 or 4 1-hour shows. So you've got like a 3 or 4 hour curriculum on prepping 101, talking about everything from food preservation, energy, water storage, self-protection, medicine, grid down scenarios, any number of things, home defense, etc. So I'm going to be covering all that. So make sure you're looking out for those episodes. Make sure you're tuning in. And I think that that's it for the day, folks. I'm, like I said this morning or earlier in the show, I'm kind of worn out. My little 7-month-old, she's sick. My 3-year-old June is just now getting better. I'm all sniffly. It's amazing that I haven't sneezed or had to blow my nose in the show tonight, because right before the show I was like filling up tissues. So So I'm ready for some sleep. Maybe you sense my energy is a little bit different tonight, but that's what it is. But I got to come and I got to be here because it's really important. So, again, folks, thank you everyone for being here. I'm so grateful that you're all here. We've got close to 3,000 people on Rumble alone watching live, and I feel very blessed that I can be someone that you find worthy of listening to. That your valuable time that you'll sit here and listen to some guy named Seth who has this podcast called Man in America. So, all right, folks, tomorrow I've got a great interview dropping with James Lindsay about the communist overthrow of America. Unfortunately, I've got another good interview with Dr. Sean Baker about the carnivore diet, which I'll be publishing soon. And again, as I mentioned, look out for the shows on prepping. So, all right, folks, thank you. Take care and God bless. See you next time.